Good, a little bit to me. Well, I'm just going to read from here. So, my name is Patrick Widmann, or Widmann. You can call me that also. I'm the owner of Protect Dive Centers in Mexico. I am on the board of advisors of PSAI as an instructor, trainer, examiner, the training director of KISS Rebreathers, and the head of research and development at X-Deep, SEAL, and KISS. And this is all extremely stressful. I work extreme hours. I'm never home. I'm super tired. So as a way of doing vacation and to relax, I then go and explore caves in remote areas, which is very relaxing. I'm supported by a couple of our brands, which are really, really important for most of our big-scale exploration efforts. We need a lot of equipment, and we break this equipment all the time, so we need new equipment all the time, so that's really important. And I partake in different teams depending on where in the world. I'm a member of the Dominican Republic Speleological Society, Quiet Diver team in Mexico, the exploration team in Brazil, and the Madagascar Cave Diving Association. Good. Let's jump over to Madagascar, the island. So first of all, it is quite, where do I point this to? Okay. It is quite an interesting landscape because when people think about caves, you usually think about something like Mexico, like a jungle and like tropics and lots of water. Well, as it turns out in Madagascar, it's mostly really dry, right? It's quite deserty. Also, all the vegetation is very dry. There's a lot of like cactuses and stuff. And so already arriving there is quite a scene because you would never expect that you're actually walking on top of millions of liters of water. This is my exploration team on this trip, so Philip Lehman and in the back is Jake.
So then once we arrive in the parking, we have our pre-exploration espresso.
It's really important.
Philip is very focused on packing the scrubber.
Just like, don't interrupt me, okay? I'm making espresso. And you have to pack the coffee really well to avoid having breakthrough.
So you might think that this is a compressor, and you're right, it's the compressor of our mini travel espresso machine. I can highly recommend it. We are actually sponsored by Wakako, so I have to mention their name at this moment. And we have this version, which you basically plug into the cigarette lighter of your car. We also have a hand presso, where you can basically create the pressure by a pump, but you need hot water for it. So, but for any of your espresso needs, if you need any contact, any hookup, you talk to me. Once we're all fueled by espresso, we use modern transportation techniques to bring our equipment to the dive site. And again, here you can see a little bit the floor. It's mostly like sand, dry. And again, you would never imagine the amount of water we're actually walking on. Once we are there, you come to the main opening of Malasamanga, which is basically like the bomb crater. It's about 100 meters wide and about 30 meters deep. And it's quite an interesting story because when we went there the first time in 2014, we stayed for 2 months and we basically traveled all over the locations there and went to different villages and asked the village people, hey, where you get your water from? And then they would bring us out to different sites, so different of these huge sinkholes, and most of them were actually dry. And we spent, like 6 weeks driving around in a Toyota 4Runner with a shitty suspension, leather seats, no air condition. It's unbelievably hot there, and there's no roads. To give an idea, to go from Tuliar to our base camp is 64 kilometers. The fastest we ever did it was in 7 hours. The longest was 11 hours because we got lost. And then we come to those different sinkholes, and it was really quite disappointing because we find so many of these sinkholes, but none of them had actually water or going cave in it. So it was a bit of like, meh. Thanks God we also surf, and it's the Mozambique Channel, so the surfing was amazing. And then the last couple of days, Philip got sick, he had food poisoning, and Ryan went back to Antananarivo, the capital, and there was only me left. and I had 3 more days. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna check out this one last sinkhole. And you saw it going down by the ladder. When we came there originally, we always rappelled with ropes. So I went down with a rope and then walked around. Everything was dry again. But then I also saw this tunnel disappearing and there was a puddle of water. So you get a little bit of an overview. So you come down from that depression, this collapse. And then you basically already see the tunnel going off at one side. We left dry suits and undergarments there. This time we wanted to have as little Sherpas as possible to make the transportation of equipment to and from the site easy. In bigger projects, we had up to 42 Sherpas per day. They only cost $5 per person, so it wasn't really that bad. But the problem is, though, how you transport 42 people on the pickup trucks even to the site, right? And then you come basically to this puddle of water. It's a really quite interesting place because there is heaps of constrictor snakes, because there's basically bats living in the dry cave section, and then the snakes are hunting the bats. So that's kind of cool. However, when I came there the first time, about 5 days prior, we came to a similar site, and I used a technique called power snorkeling. Before we bring all of the equipment there, we're basically just with a small tank in the hand, like, compressed gas, extensive range snorkeling. And as I go down on the roof, I can see something stuck to the ceiling. Long story short, I turned around, was a dead person. Somebody from the village had brought out cows and then jumped in the water and dove underwater too far. So I'm traumatized still. So I'm by myself looking at that lake. There was some hydrogen sulfide cloud in it. And I was like, didn't really want to go. But then there's always this push for an explorer, right? We are in southern tip of Madagascar. It's right next to South Africa. South Africa has cave divers. So I'm not gonna leave here and then some South African dude's gonna rock up, find the best cave in the fucking planet. And I'm like, I stood on the water's edge. So I went. So the main idea of this presentation is to share a different spotlight on Malasamanga, right? Because usually when I give these presentations in the UK or in Australia, they always go like, oh, Patrick, you only explore caves with really good visibility. Here in the UK, So I want to show. So on this presentation, I'm going to show you it's not always sunshine and lollipops, okay? So I'm going to show you a little bit the dark side of cave exploring in Malasamanga also. This year specifically was quite interesting because you can see the tannic quad on top, how it is green. So basically, Madagascar saw 2 typhoons so it's basically like the, Africa version of a hurricane. Yeah, so lots and lots of wind and horizontal rain. In the Austrian mountains, we call it summer afternoon weather. But for them, it's like an event, so to speak. And it's quite cool because it changes the color. So you go from like crystal clear, and then it goes like all green and dark, and then it comes back down. So it was pretty epic. And of course, you see the really vast size of some of those tunnels. So this is about 100 meters wide. And already over the last couple of years, so when we started exploring there, it was open circuit side mount in a wetsuit, my first time actually there. And we had 12-watt dive lights. So imagine you would explore this place in here with the light on your phone. So that's how that felt a little bit. And then we switched to rebreathers, and rebreathers and ultimately also became a little bit the limiting factor, because the rebreathers were quite big, right? I started exploring with the Megalodon and then switched to JJ rebreathers. And the rebreather on the right-hand side has exactly 10 hours of diving on it. Because I picked it up in Paris just before going there, and this was after the second dive. I was like, they're not gonna be happy about that if I have to give it back. But most of the cave is really big, but anyway, so bigger back-mounted rebreathers were a bit the limiting factor then. I don't know how well you can see that. Well, you can see pretty good. This is just to give you a little bit, don't watch so much the notes. This is just stuff that, we just to orient ourselves. But the 2 places that I want to point out is can I walk over here? So the thing that says like no name and Anubis, and then the one at the very bottom says Mega, like the yellow and the blue. So those were the two places that we had left, so to speak, and we thought, hey, this is worthwhile to go back there and see if there's more going cave, now with smaller sized rebreathers. My biggest hope was where you see the yellow star, that's the main entrance, right, the thing on the top. If you go to the east, we actually found 4 more smaller cave entrances, collapses. They had really interesting artifacts in it also. Basically horned crocodiles that are extinct for 4,000 years. There was really, really interesting paleontology in there. But we could never really go any further. Now at the very end, right, when you look at Google Earth, you can actually see a lake, and the lake is growing and disappearing depending the time of the year. And you can see that Malasamanga is basically feeding one end of that lake. Now, if I would also work in IT, I would have this amazing Google Earth image zooming in, flying over with this thing. But I'm a diving instructor and I don't know how that works. So, next time. Imagine it, Google Earth, diving in. So in my theory, maybe there's more than this one line of cave that is feeding that lake, specifically because Malasamanga is on one end of it. So would it not make sense there is more going right towards the middle? So that was the hope. And I thought that maybe we can break out and go basically from where you're looking at to the right-hand side, and then maybe break into one of those massive conduits again, which would have been the dream. So off we went. Okay. And so something right away that you see different, right? All of the pictures so far was like really crystal clear blue water, right? And like quite light cave walls. Here you can see everything is quite darker. That's because we're approximately at 40-ish meters. There everything seems to be much blacker and darker. And the reason for that is that in Malasamanga there used to live a massive, I'm pointing out a lead there, a massive bat colony, like millions and millions and millions of bats. So when you come closer to the sediment, you can actually see all of the bat bones still sticking out. There's millions of little skulls, millions of those bat bones. Bit like Terminator 2 at the beginning, just not human. But, okay.